Okay, alrighty. So hi everybody, welcome. My name is Cristhabel and I am an advanced standing student here in the School of Social Work. I am in the Policy and Administration track, and today I will be talking to you guys about understanding DACA and the role of social workers have in playing and advancing immigration justice. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this because this is actually where my field placement is at. So being able to be a part of this new center that's developing has been very humbling, and just being able to be part of all of the new developments that are happening is really great. So, yeah. So today, this is kind of a little bit of an agenda for us. So today we'll talk about organizations supporting undocumented, documented students in Wisconsin. So I'll talk about the Center for Dreamers, but I also will be talking a little bit about Dreamers of Wisconsin, which is another organization that supports students in Wisconsin. I'll also kind of go over DACA and like the history of DACA and how it kind of came to be. And then we can kind of dive into DACA as a population as well. And then dive in more into the state of Wisconsin and what the undocumented, documented experience is here in our state. And then last but not least, tie it all together with how social workers play a role in advancing immigration justice. Okay. So the Center for Dreamers provides services through a holistic and intersectional approach, such as legal, educational, mental, and social services and career resources to the DACA community in Wisconsin through presentations and community outreach, as well as supports culturally responsive trainings. So the staff at the center is Erica, who is actually back there. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself or anything.
Oh, sure. Hi. My name is Cristhabel Martinez, and as Paul mentioned, I'm the director for the Little Center for Dreamers, which we have received the Center for Dreamers as an opportunity to a grant. And it's going to be a 3-year grant. Hopefully, in that time, we get either more funding or we're able to have it be institutional office, which would be wonderful. Cool. And we also have other staff members that work alongside with us through the Immigration Justice Clinic, and that is through the directorship of Karen Bergodo, who is the Immigration Justice Clinic director, and she also co-wrote the grant with me, so we kind of co-direct, and then there's 2 attorneys, and then some students that help us out with the legal clinic. So thank you all for having me.
Yes, and then there's me, who is the program assistant. So a little bit about what I do at the Center for Dreamers. I kind of do more of the social work aspect, of course, creating resource guides for social work students to be able to learn more about the different barriers that undocumented and documented students face in Wisconsin, as well as providing or creating a resource guide for students about the different social services that they can access in Wisconsin, whether that is housing services, financial assistance, or food assistance, and any other services as well. And I do a little bit of case management, so I'll meet or talk over the phone with students as well and kind of help facilitate any services that they may need. So this is the Center for Dreamers offers legal services. So through collaboration, as Erica mentioned, with the Immigrant Justice Clinic, the Center for Dreamers provides legal representation that focuses on these different objectives, which are DACA renewals, applications for advanced parole, collateral applications such as special immigration, juvenile status, U visa, asylum, employed-based immigrant visas, and deportation defense as well. Among other services that the Center for Dreamers is offering are trainings for schools of social work, and then for culturally responsive support for DACA and undocumented individuals, and it referrals to culturally competent social and mental health services for documented students, as well as providing statewide education and career counseling to documented college students through online resources, tools, and events, which is huge. And that's kind of a little bit about what Erica also does at the center, providing educational services and counseling for students. in addition to collaboration opportunities between colleges and universities in Wisconsin to provide more effective tools to serve the undocumented and documented students in Wisconsin. So this is, I'll briefly touch over the work that I do. In addition to Dreamers, the Center for Dreamers, I also have a nonprofit organization called Dreamers of Wisconsin. So we work more so with the high school population in Wisconsin and helping students transition from high school into college while they're applying to higher education. So a little bit of what we kind of do, currently we just launched our Dreamers RISE program, which is a pre-college program for undocumented, documented students in Wisconsin, providing different opportunities such as mentorship, internships, and then also providing services in terms of how to apply to like scholarships and all of that, and that's kind of through our writing center as well. Yeah. Alrighty, so now getting into the educational component. So we're kind of going to talk about again over DACA and like talk about the history of it. So I'm not sure if anyone's heard of the DREAM Act before or is familiar with it, but this is really where DACA kind of stemmed from. The DREAM Act is a bill that would have provided a pathway to citizenship for undocumented students who grew up in the U.S. if they had gone to college or served in the military. And this bill specifically also aimed to provide in-state tuition for students who were undocumented. However, this never actually passed, and it had been an ongoing bill that had been going through Congress from 2001 through 2010. But it did set up, again, the precedent for DACA. And then we're going to kind of talk about terminology. So who are the Dreamers? Because I know that that's kind of like a term that is used, like Dreamers of Wisconsin or the Center for Dreamers. So we can kind of talk about that history as well. So who are the Dreamers? In the last few years, the term Dreamer has been used to describe young undocumented immigrants who were brought into the United States as children, who have lived and gone to school here and who consider this country as their home. The term Dreamer originally took its name from the bill in Congress, but it has a double meaning about the undocumented youth who have big hopes and dreams for a better future. And kind of going into terminology, although Dreamer is a common term that is used, it is still kind of something, well, it currently is like rejected among the undocumented community because it doesn't embody the whole entire undocumented community. Similar to like DACA, for even though there are DACA recipients, it doesn't embody students or people who don't fall or have DACA. So the establishment of DACA. So DACA was established, or the program was announced in 2012 by President Barack Obama, which basically provides a 2-year protection from deportation and provides individuals who receive the DACA with work authorization as well. However, it does not mean that it is a pathway to citizenship. Again, it's a temporary protection. And then going back into like key terms, you'll often, throughout probably the presentation, hear me use the word documented or undocumented. So kind of making a distinction between those two. So documented is an undocumented individual who has been granted the deferred action for childhood arrivals, and it's similar to Dreamers, but it is sometimes used to navigate away from the negative connotations given to other terms as well. In terms of undocumented, so it refers to people who are not U.S. citizens or permanent residents of the United States who do not hold a current visa to reside in the U.S. and who have not been approved for legal residency in the United States. I would like to say, though, that although students may have DACA, they can still identify as undocumented, again, because it is a temporary protection. So just being conscious of the terms that we use. So continuation of DACA, like as I mentioned a little bit earlier before, it does provide work authorization and individuals with a social security number, allowing recipients to have driver's licenses and identification cards. DACA is also, again, it's a temporary protection, and to apply for this, there are certain eligibility criteria that have to be met. So here's a little bit of a list. So people had to be before the age of 16 to even be eligible. They had to meet certain educational requirements and had to be under the age of 31 as of June 15th of 2012. And have never been convicted of a felony or posed a threat to national security or public safety. So limitations of DACA. So DACA recipients are still required to pay out-of-state tuition in most universities and colleges. So Wisconsin is a great example of that. Although students can fill out the FAFSA to help them see what colleges might apply or might be able to offer aid, that still doesn't mean that they're eligible for state financial aid or the federal financial aid that helps a lot of students with grants, scholarships, and all of that. DACA also does not lead to a path to citizenship or permanent residency, and it can be revoked at any time, as I'm sure many of you are familiar and have seen the ongoing things in the media in terms of DACA. And then DACA recipients still live in constant uncertainty and experience fear, anxiety, and sometimes depression as they are constantly having to worry about what the court will decide and whether that decision will affect their ability to continue attending school, working, or staying in the country and pursuing their dreams. As we continue to witness the legal battles unfold in the courts and its attempts to rescind the program, again, there's fear that the U.S. government has access to individuals' information who can easily locate them too. So that's just another part as well that I'd like to highlight. So now I'm going to kind of jump into the little bit of history of like the rescission of DACA. So when Trump came into office in 2016, he had said that he wanted to rescind DACA, and in 2017, they said that Obama's executive order was illegal, and then lawsuits were filed, and Trump gave Congress a deadline to come up basically with like an alternative. And in 2018, amid legal battles, courts blocked Trump's repeal of DACA, and renewals were allowed to continue, but new applications were not accepted. And then we kind of jump into 2019, where the fight continues, and it resulted in a 35-day government shutdown, the longest in the U.S. history. And Trump tried to make a deal of $5.7 million for a border wall in exchange for temporary protection for Dreamers. Democrats said no, and the government eventually reopened with no DACA action, and the Supreme Court agreed to hear DACA cases. So that's 2019, and then we are going to jump into 2020. So arbitrary and capricious are the words that were used by the Supreme Court to describe Trump's move to rescind DACA, and it was a 5-4 ruling that allowed DACA to continue and provide temporary protections for nearly 650,000 Dreamers benefiting from the act. And then jumping into where is DACA now. So most recently on July 2021, a Texas judge issued a ruling partially ending DACA. While the decision may get appealed, it is important to know how it impacts the program now and what that means. So the program continues for those who currently or formerly had DACA, but it is closed to those who would be applying for the first time. And DACA recipients are able still to apply for advanced parole and applying for permission to travel outside of the United States through that advanced parole. Alrighty, so I'm sure a lot of you have also heard a lot of things in the media of like why a pathway to citizenship. So these are kind of a list of why we need a pathway to citizenship to provide certainty for students and DACA recipients or the undocumented community who have been waiting for a permanent solution for since 2001 up until 2021. Now it's been 21 years, and then in terms of DACA, 9 years. But also, immigrants are members of our communities, and we need to answer their call to honor their humanity by providing people with a pathway to citizenship. Families with undocumented members need the stability and certainty that comes with the legal status, as being undocumented is often traumatic. Citizenship improves the lives of undocumented immigrants, their families, and their communities by no longer having to live in fear of being deported or not having the proper paperwork. In addition to that, undocumented immigrants already contribute to the U.S. economy, and they do pay taxes as well. And it would expand educational opportunities for DACA and undocumented individuals, as it would also allow, hopefully, for in-state tuition. So now we're going to kind of go over DACA recipients as a population. So according to the Migration Policy Institute, as of June 2021, there are 570,000 active DACA recipients. In 2020, there was an estimate of this immediately eligible population of 1.3 million. So where are DACA recipients from? So first of all, immigrants are from all around the world. The DACA community are recipients. This is a table that I took out from 2001, but there were nationals from 195 different countries. And these are the top 10 rankings of the different countries that DACA recipients who got DACA. Number 1 is Mexico, and then El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Peru, South Korea, Brazil, Ecuador, and I believe Colombia and Argentina. However, just a reflection moment, again, immigrants come from all over the country, and undocumentedness isn't restricted to one immigrant community. It is a topic that impacts all communities. Just want to put that out there. So DACA recipients' age of initial entry. So as you can see by the graph, the age of entry were between ages 1 through 7. So if this was in 2012 and we're in 2021, we can jump in to see where the age gap, the age of DACA recipients are today, which are tend to be between the ages of 21 and 30, as you can see there. Occupations, DACA recipients, as well as the undocumented population, are people who are in all different types of fields and occupations, just like anyone else, and they are essential workers as well. And they are people who are in construction, farming, food services, manufacturing and production, hospitality, retail trade, in the education field, health and social services, and other professional fields as well. So now we can kind of jump into the undocumented and documented immigrants in Wisconsin. So there are about 75,000 undocumented immigrants living in Wisconsin. As of June 2021, there are an estimated 11,000 DACA eligible residents in Wisconsin. And then as of June 2021, Wisconsin has 5,990 DACA recipients. Yes?
Can I ask you a question now? Or?
Sure.
So is DACA currently closed for new applications?
Yes.
And then when it was mentioned that arriving before age 16 and you can apply, if it were open, it would be eligible for those who arrived before age 16 to apply before they're 31?
That is my understanding. Erica, if you want to answer that question.
Yeah, so that is correct. However, they would have to have been here on a specific date, which I know I'm not sure how they came to that conclusion, but they would have been here June 12th of 2012.
Okay.
And they would have to provide some sort of, not they, I include myself, we had, because I remember that was a bit myself, we had to provide some sort of proof that you were here on that specific date. And that you can't provide proof, then you're not eligible for the program. But, so it's not necessarily incoming people from, that are immigrating or that are migrating. It's specifically for folks who have been here for a while, for children, for folks who came here as children, essentially.
Great. So kind of evaluating why the Center for Dreamers exists, it's about providing opportunity and for students who are already at a disadvantage. And I'm going to kind of talk about the different policies that already exist that may create barriers for undocumented students and documented students as well here in Wisconsin. So when we evaluate access, there are state policies in 4 key areas. So first we'll kind of talk about in-state tuition and state financial aid. As I kind of mentioned earlier, students who are undocumented and documented are not eligible for federal financial aid nor state financial aid. And in addition to that, Wisconsin doesn't provide in-state tuition for students here, which again creates a financial barrier in terms of accessing higher education. And then in terms of workforce and entry and eligibility, so there's actually no state policies that have identified to actively expand access to occupational licensures. So even if students did go to college, let's say, right, and they graduated, the licensing procedure is very complex when you're undocumented or documented, because a lot of licensing programs require you to be a U.S. citizen. And that's why the Center for Dreamers, especially the work that Erica does working with like education and counseling, being able to help those students navigate those barriers is very important, and for the Center for Dreamers to exist. And then in addition to that, in terms of workforce entry, so not just the licensure, there's also the workforce component. So if you don't have a social security number, for example, how are you able to work? Maybe you can work, but you probably wouldn't be in jobs that are paying you what you can like apply yourself to, and also it makes you more vulnerable to be exploited in terms of like the workforce. And then in terms of mobility, there are no policies that in the state that provide undocumented students with access, or I'm sorry, the undocumented community with driver's licenses. So DACA students do get, or recipients get driver's licenses, but then again, we still have this other population who is fully undocumented, or I'm sorry, who is undocumented, and yeah, mobility is just like another fear, and that would just provide giving people driver's license, and again, opportunities for jobs as well, and yeah. So social workers and immigration justice. So this is my favorite part of the presentation, because as social workers, we play a huge part in advancing social justice, of course. So the responsibility of social workers. We are tasked with fighting for justice for all people. Whether we're allies or directly affected by this issue, it is imminent that we support and raise our voices on behalf of all the undocumented and documented community. Our actions are needed across agency sectors, in the communities, and in policy and advocacy arenas as well. To act effectively, however, we need to be well informed. So considerations for social workers. So first, kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier about being informed. Having knowledge about and understanding the range of immigration statuses and barriers is key, because a lot of immigration statuses affect children, parents, and everyone differently. And again, depending on like what your immigration status is. So if immigrants fall within one of these categories, a lot of them do, whether they're legal permanent residents, naturalized citizens, refugees, or undocumented or documented. The category of different legal rights and access to services looks different for everyone who has a different immigration status. And a lot of them are people who come from like mixed status families. So for example, what a mixed status family could be, if I had undocumented parents, for example, but I am a US born citizen, that's a mixed status family. And then again, it means being able to be knowledgeable of like the different services that people can be eligible for through the different family statuses is important to know. And again, social workers can help eligible children, youth, and families tap into those appropriate resources as well. So do you work at an agency? I'm sure you guys are, and your different field placements if you guys are students, but one of the things you can do to actually learn more about the barriers that undocumented students face, or the undocumented community as a whole face, is by looking into what services are available to non-citizens. So, and advocate for your organization to take steps to make sure that services aren't restricted based on citizenship status. Further considerations for social workers. So, partner with immigration serving organizations like the Center for Dreamers, Dreamers of Wisconsin, or even the Dane County Immigration Affairs Office, which is an incredibly useful resource here in Dane County for the immigrant community, and they offer bilingual, bicultural, or have bilingual, bicultural social workers that support the immigrant and refugee community with Dane County, and they're knowledgeable about how to navigate those different barriers and systems that are in place. So doing research on different organizations is another good way to keep up to date as well on information. And then another way that you can stay informed and educate yourself about immigration issues or just the undocumented, documented experience is by listening to podcasts. So this is Dr. Mancia. He's actually the facilitator for Dreamers of Wisconsin's pre-college program, but he provides podcasts that he has an episode almost, I believe, every week, if I'm not mistaken, and just highlighting how immigration ties into, or undocumented students face barriers within higher education, and how people can support and all of that. Although it's not social work related, it's still a huge part, because there are social workers who work in schools who should be knowledgeable about things like these. And actually, in episode 5, there was they had Janet Arenas, who was actually a bilingual community social worker. So listening to her story is really cool, and you can hear it from her. Another way to stay informed is by watching documentaries. So this is a Netflix documentary about 8 undocumented families whose fates roller coaster as the United States immigration policies are transformed. I watched this this documentary, and it broke my heart to see it. And I remember just even showing it to one of my education policy students, and students had to leave the room. I think it's just a really good way to really connect. I think we hear so much in the media that we can desensitize ourselves from what's being in the media, but this is a good way to see real life stories, and I think just to, again, show compassion and empathy and all of that. And then another way to stay informed is to subscribe to newsletters. This is a shameless plug for Dreamers of Wisconsin. That basically it's a good way to learn about the different events that are happening and in the community, whether that's through the Center for Dreamers or Dreamers of Wisconsin or whatever other organizations that are providing services for our undocumented community. And you can learn about different events and then fundraising events, as well as volunteering opportunities, which is another way to stay involved and do your part as well in immigration justice. Other ways to stay informed and educate yourself are by diversifying who you follow on social media. And these are 2 great organizations that I love, specifically Undoc Change. So this is an account that's actually created by an undocumented student. They don't reveal who they are, but they are constantly providing information to spread awareness about immigration issues and what students face on a day-to-day base. And in addition to that, I recommend following Immigrants Rising. It's a nonprofit organization in California who's transforming individuals and fueling broader changes. So they actually offer different services, whether that's educational services, mental health programming services for their students. But again, they have really good resources for mental health providers on there in case you are a mental health social worker as well. And then last but not least, advocate. So challenge and hold Congress and organizations, universities and other institutions accountable for the way that they treat the undocumented community. I think together, especially if we are not undocumented or documented, we can use our privilege and our voice to really advocate for change in terms of removing structural and institutional barriers, and just in general advocate for immigration reform as well. So these are just some things that I'll leave of do's and don'ts for supporting DACA recipients, in addition to the undocumented community as well. Do listen to the students and client stories and the emotions behind them. Engage with open mind and ask for permission to follow up for questions. Even though someone might be willing to share their experience, making sure that you're creating a safe environment for that individual, because opening up about your status is something that's very, traumatic because of the experience and barriers that you have to face as an undocumented individual. But also they might not want to share more than they have already shared. And yeah, just being aware of your surroundings when discussing students and their client immigration status as well, because it is such a sensitive topic. And then don'ts, of course, name calls, just knowing like the right terminology to use when working with the undocumented population. So terms to stay away from are illegal, aliens. Don't do that, please. Don't assume that everyone's story is the same, because it's not. Everyone has different walks of life. We're all social workers, we know. We've had our own experiences as well, and even though someone might be undocumented or come from a mixed status family, everyone experiences, and the barriers that they face are different. Don't overshare. So with that, it's just, if someone comes to you and is like trusting enough to confide about their status, yeah, don't share that information with anybody, because that's something very confidential and personal. And in terms of pity, the undocumented community and DACA recipients are resilient. So they are so strong for everything that they've had to encounter in navigating their different systems and complex barriers. So I think, you know, making sure that you're showing compassion and empathy, but not pitting individuals. And then I want to share some upcoming events. So actually this weekend, there is going to be an immigration resource fair, which will provide important legal information on how to prepare and protect your family if you're undocumented. And then you'll also be able to learn more about different community organizations and resources in the state of Wisconsin who work with the immigrant population. And that will be actually held in Madison College this weekend. The Center for Dreamers will be there too. So. And then another upcoming event, the Center for Dreamers is, we have virtual immigration legal clinic. And I talked about the legal services briefly before, but the next one is on December 3rd, 2021, from 1 to 3:30. So all services are free of charge and confidential, and consultations will be conducted over the phone. So if for whatever reason you might be working with a client who needs legal services, this is a great resource to provide to them, as it is open to all DACA and undocumented members in the state of Wisconsin. And then if you want to connect with us, this is our contact information for the Center for Dreamers, as well as Dreamers of Wisconsin, email, and then website, and then our phone numbers as well. Okay, well that was it for my presentation. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions for me or Erica. Yes.
I have a question about public burden for documented folks. So, like, what would the public burden charge be on documented folks if they apply for like food assistance, medical assistance? Like, what does that look like?
The public charge, like financially, like what that would look like is what you're asking, or?
Yeah, like I just know the fear of folks like applying for it, that they might not be able to get their green card if Pathway to Citizenship opens.
Okay.
So like, is that true, or like what does the public charge look like?
I don't know, Erica, do you want to answer that question? Because I feel like I have.
I have a hard time doing it.
Yeah, I was asking about public charge and like how there's a fear of the community, whether undocumented or documented, to apply for like assistance, whether it's medical or food, because of the fear that public charge will prevent folks from getting approved for a green card if a pathway for citizenship opens in the future.
So that would apply more to undocumented folks. DACA recipients, we are eligible for some things, but not others, as we have access to a driver's license and social security number, as well as a work permit. That kind of opens up a lot more access for us to have, for example, if we have a social security number, then we can apply for a job, and we have more access to things like benefits and insurance as well. And for undocumented folks that are undocumented but don't have DACA, don't have access to that, and there have been a lot of fears, and I think that every organization is treating it a little bit differently, where they will representative that will not report, their services to the government. And I think that it's been changing quite a bit. So I've been trying to keep up with it, but when it comes to immigration stuff, it changes almost every day, which is really hard to keep up. And I do know that there's quite a big fear. But then again, with the public charge might change in the future too, so that those things are not considered to be of danger for anyone that wants to apply. So I hope that's helpful. There's mud.
Yeah,
immigration and sorry.
I think, Erica, I think you've said before too, right, that it can be complex within families. So you might have if parents are undocumented and have a citizen child, they're eligible, for example, to get Medicaid for the child, but families might have fears around that. So there's also some complexity of some family members might be eligible for services that other family members are not eligible for.
Yeah, it gets really tricky because oftentimes folks don't feel comfortable, sharing that information. It's wonderful if, folks like you all that have access to this knowledge, and hopefully we'll be learning more. And obviously not to make assumptions, but if there's a way for you all to share, like whether having a poster or something that you welcome undocumented folks into your space, and that you're an ally, I think that folks can feel a little bit more comfortable and feel more supported, because I know in my case, I've been very fearful for my own safety as well as my family's, and sometimes, we don't seek out for support for the same reasons. So I think as open as people can be and knowledgeable, that's really helpful to be supported.
Yeah, and then like one of the things too, which is really cool that the Center for Dreamers is doing, is again trying to create like those resource guides for families and individuals to know what services they can access. And even if they're perhaps, like Erica was saying, there might not be a service directly that they can access, we're trying to identify safe people within across the state of Wisconsin who we can direct people to if there's not an immigration affairs office, for example, like Dane County, especially like in rural areas. And yeah, we want to make sure that everyone has the services that they need.
So one, right now in my field work, I'm doing stuff for Daca Recipients and stuff, so I definitely want to connect with you. But two, what is like I'm not from Wisconsin specifically, so what is the University of Wisconsin like in terms of undocumented, documented, and just like the culture of Wisconsin as a whole? So I kind of guesses.
Yeah, well, policy, so in terms of the culture, I think people are trying to become more aware and educate themselves, which again, going back to like the Center for Dreamers and the work Erica does, and like creating those relationships with different colleges and campuses across Wisconsin is key, because I think a lot of people want to help but don't know how to help. And one of the things that I think would be helpful is for institutions to advocate for in-state residency tuition for their students. Because if legislation can't provide in-state tuition, then institutions can do their part and provide like funding for their students, and provide more scholarships for undocumented and documented students. And also every institution does it differently, so a technical college versus a private college versus a public institution. So private colleges, because they're privately funded and all that, they're actually, a lot of private colleges across Wisconsin provide scholarships that are open to undocumented students. And have already established resources too. Marquette is a great example of that. Alverno College also has another scholarship that's available too, specifically for undocumented students as well. And yeah, and then the public institutions like UW-Madison and other ones, they don't have in-state residency for students. Actually, UW-Milwaukee has a program, but yeah, we still need to like create change and advocate for different institutions to make it all even across different institutions. And yeah, I'm not sure if that answered your question, but Erica, I know if you can add more information.
The only thing that I could add is that there's a really great opportunity for Wisconsin to be more open to Daca recipients and undocumented, especially in terms of education, higher education. There are other states that have their own policies and state policies. For example, California is a really great example that they're able to provide in-state tuition, not necessarily, well, I won't get into the trenches of that, but they're able to have a lot more resources for DACA and undocumented students. When it comes to Wisconsin, there's a lot of policy involved, and especially when it comes to more visible universities like Madison. And so the policies become more restrictive, the more visible and the more funding that the schools receive. I think that folks within the institutions who want to be supportive are doing amazing work. Doing work with the DACA and undocumented community is really hard work because we have to go around and we have to try to find ways as providing services that either don't exist in educating folks or that exist but are not very well known. So I think that things are becoming better. I'm hopeful, and with our work, including Cristhabel's work, and also Dreamers of Wisconsin as other organizations, we're trying to be this collective part of making things better, but also having the support of allies and folks who are out in the field and having folks connecting with other people and sharing that information as well is really, really, really helpful.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
Question for you and Erica, and I'm mostly trying to give you an opportunity to say a little bit more about what you do, but I'm wondering, we have a couple of people in the room who support admissions at the school, and I'm wondering, how people can kind of stay current. You talked about how things change so fast, and so, policy a year ago for somebody applying might be different now. Is the Center for Dreamers kind of a go-to place, or, how can we steer students who are interested in applying or who are currently here who might have questions about what they're eligible for or not eligible for and want to navigate these things?
Yeah, definitely. That's what we want to be there for on both ends, for students and then also for administrators, staff, faculty. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to entering programs, applying, and even receiving diplomas or a professional license. And we've had to already, we're only a month-old babies, but we're going to navigate all of this because oftentimes, even within the institution, there are things that are not very well known. For example, Daca Recipients were considered international students, but we're not international students. So then we have to have those conversations with admissions and to see what it is that folks can do, because if you're put in as an international student, then you have to have the insurance for international students, and so things change quite a bit, which don't apply for DACA recipients. So yeah, we would love to be that support, and if we don't have the answers, we will definitely look for them and try to connect folks with others who might have better answers. But yeah, definitely come to us for all of that.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Well, I'll take 1 minute to publicly thank and congratulate Erica and Cristhabel. They mentioned it's 1 month old and they've done so much in a month, and this program is just getting off the ground and it's so needed here. So I hope all of you will think of the Center for Dreamers as a resource for clients, fellow students, staff and faculty at the university, that they have a lot to offer, and you guys are doing such great work.
I'll just quickly add that Cristhabel is planning on doing follow-up presentations, and maybe we can touch a little bit more on Cristhabel, and then also the resource guide that we've been creating.
Yeah, so I'm planning to do more presentations in the spring, and they're going to be more catered, centered. So this was kind of more of a broad educational presentation, but I'll be doing presentations for school social workers and the undocumented community, and then I'll also be doing another presentation on mental health providers and social workers, mental health LCSWs and the undocumented community, and then I'll probably be doing another presentation on specifically social services that the undocumented community is able to access or not able to access, and then how to navigate those systems who work directly with with that population. Try to think if there's any other ones that I would probably touch on. I might do a presentation on detention centers and like the impact and and all of that. But yeah, my priority ones are to the ones who are working directly with the undocumented community and providing services. So yeah. I don't know if there's anything else I need to add.
Resource guide.
The resource guide, thank you. Yeah, that resource guide is, hopefully it'll be completed by next semester, but it's basically a statewide resource guide that provides different information on housing services in the 72 different counties in Wisconsin, in addition to food assistance in the 72 counties, in addition to mental health resources in the 72 different counties of Wisconsin. And again, like kind of I mentioned earlier, that resource guide that I'm creating will hopefully have a contact person in each county that we can refer people to who know the services better in that county. And just having like a safe person, again, spread out throughout different parts of Wisconsin would be great.
Are you doing that all by yourself?
Yes.
Do you need help?
If you'd like to help, it'd be great. Yeah, because it's a lot of phone calls, research. Yeah, but I love the work I do, so it's a lot of fun. I mean, fun to like try to like what do you call it? Create better systems. So yeah. Cool.
And I have my business card too in case any of the want to stay in touch or contact us.
Great. Well, if there are no other questions, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you all who were able to make it and came to learn more about the undocumented and documented population in Wisconsin.
Thank you.